So in the last video we had discussed about how to create forms and different kinds of input fields. In this video we'll be discussing three things. First is where is that form data going once you submit something. Second is file uploads, on how to upload files in a form. Third is form validation, which means how to put validation checks. Let's say if there is an email field that should be checking if the email format is correct, right? Now fourth is limitations. This is something that we'll learn in this video. I'm not very clear about what this means, but let's begin. So in the last video we had kind of understood that we are able to create a form with a form tag and give labels to different fields and put inputs, but once you submit, where does that data go, right? So if you check this, we had we had put something called slash let's say rabbit submissions, right? So this is the page where your data goes, right? Once you submit, uh, and the reason the data goes is because we have put a post method, and this is something that I reiterated in the last video, is that when you put a action like post, it basically means that you are telling the server that this is the data that the user has input and you have to take it to the server, right? If you have to fetch some data from the server, you use the get method, right? If we go to our first html.html, right? So you'll see that we have this form, right? And now I'll start something called inspect. Here our code is showing up HTML, but if we go to network and I preserve the log, make sure you have the preserve log, because otherwise if the page changes, all of it disappears. So let's say I enter my data as name as Siddharth and Siddharth at test.com, right? I like rabbits, they are fluffy, I think they have humor, and I see them in a park and maybe online on the internet, so somewhere else. Now if I click on submit, oh, I didn't save this. Sorry, I'll just save it. Now if I just go here, I'll just put the data again, Siddharth at test.com, Siddharth, oh sorry, don't like Siddharth, rabbits, why do you find them cool? They're fluffy, yeah, they have a humor, and I visit them in a park and somewhere else. Now if I click on submit, I get an error here, right? Because there is no rabbit submissions file today, but we can take them to some other page like a thank you page or something like that. No, that is the action it's taking. But what also happens is that we are also sending some data, right? Where is that data going? So if you go to the networks tab, you have the preserve log opened up, and you open these information, one of them, let's say rabbit.html, right? And if you go sorry, okay, sure, not rabbit.html, it's preserving the old log actually. Oh yeah, rabbit submissions. So if I go to rabbit submissions, that's the URL that I had put in here, right? And if you go to, there will be headers, there will be payload and preview and all of that, right? Response, initiator and all of that. If you go to preview, if you go to payload, you can see that all the information that I put in here was recorded. This was sent as the form data as a HTTP request and thrown to rabbit submissions. Suppose I change it to something called, let's say, submit form, right, and I save it, we'll go back to our first HTML and I'll put in the name Harry, Harry at harry.com. Let's say they like dogs. No, have uh, they are loyal, and let's say they have style, and I have a pet at home, and I see them online, right? And if I click on submit now, you'll see submit form appears in the network tab. If I click here and I see the payload contains all the information that I just submitted. So all this data is being sent, but since it has nowhere to go to, there's just a log of it. Now that's the basic understanding I have currently, and hopefully in the future, as we deal with more complex topics on how to store this data, maybe we'll have a better grasp on how to showcase all the information that we have just gotten from the form, how to store this data in some sort of database, right? But for now, this is the understanding about I have, and this is how you can track all the form submissions that you have made, right? Next thing that we'll go to is, I'll just close this place. I'll just close. How to handle file uploads. So this is again, you can put in a input type file, and this will let you choose um, you know, what kind of file that you want to put in. So we can try that. I think no, I think I don't want to do this, because technically it's I would rather have this more like a real life use case project. When we do a project, which I'll be doing later on as we end HTML, we'll try this up. But for now, this is something that you can do. If you put in input type is equal to file ID, you give it an ID and a name as usual, like you do for any other input type, and you just give a accept attribute and tell them like, okay, you need to accept only PNG files or JPEG files, right? So I'll leave this topic for now, because I feel this is something that we need to try when you do real life projects. Form validation. So what is form validation? Form validation is a process of checking if the information a user provides is correct, right, and complete. So how do you do this, right? So something, for example, if I go to Cool Rabbits and if I put, Harry at Harry, and I try to submit it, sorry, Harry at, right, it says it needs to have something after at, otherwise the form is incomplete. So this email is incomplete because it does not have the right input item, because it is expecting some sort of email. If you just have a name or at after the name, it doesn't mean it's an email. But let's say I put anything here, right, and I submit, sorry, Harry at harry.com, right, and I submit, so the form gets submitted, right? What we ideally want is that the name should not be, say, less than 5 characters and more than 30 characters or 40 characters, right? So how do you do that? All right, so let's say we go back to our input. We'll go back to input and we'll go to our text type. And if you go to text type, right, you can set a minimum and max length attribute, right? So suppose I put in in this input, let's say min length equals 4, it should be at least 4, and max length equals 40, right? And I save it and I go back to my page. I'll reload it, right? And if I put in something like sit, it's less than 4 characters, right? So let's say, what animal do you like? Dogs, right? And I'll submit. It'll say please lengthen this text to 4 characters or more. You're currently using 3 characters, right? So suppose I type, you know, more than, like, if I type more than 30-40 characters, it'll stop me somewhere, right? So yeah, that's the idea. If I that's the idea of a validation. So if I go to the client's not client side, let's say if I go to using HTML form validation, right? So there are certain validation rules that you put, like you can put min, max, or required, or step, or min length, or max length. For instance, if I put in something like, let's say that this text field where you need to put in an animal name, it should be a mandatory field, right? If I put in required and now I go to my page, let's say I don't put anything here, I just have an email and I submit. Oh, I didn't reload it. I'll reload it. So space, I try to submit. It will say like it is a mandatory field, so you need to fill it. So let's say the animal is dogs. Now you'll be able to submit it. So if I click on submit, yeah. So validation are rules that you set to these, input tags, that hey, this place should be mandatory, this place should not have more than 40 characters, this place should have minimum 4 characters, and all of that. And you can kind of go through the documentation in order to understand how this form validation can be done. So it says required, so it means there must be a value. If set, you can put max, it means the value must be less than. So if you have something like a number input, right, numerical input, you can decide what should be the minimum and max value of this, right? You can put patterns. It means like you can expect like you need, so something like an email has a pattern, right? If the pattern doesn't match, it means the input will not take it and it will ask you to follow that pattern, right? So these are the things that are called validations. Now we'll go and see what limitations are. HTML form constraints are rules that you set on form fields to control what kind of data users enter. So basically this is the same thing, but we'll try to understand if this means something else, if there is something that we are missing. Constraint validation process done through validation API, either on single form at the form level. So by the call to check validity or report validity, DM interface which evaluates constraints only on this element, allowing a script to get this information. Is there a example? So as an example, we'll add a script checking the constraint validation. Oh, this is more JavaScript related, so we'll cover this topic also later. So right now, for the sake of simplicity, we have covered labels and inputs, how to create forms, and where does that form information go, and how to do validation. So we'll be doing file uploads and limitations later. Limitations we'll do when we cover JavaScript, and file uploads when we know how to, we'll know when we start working on some real life examples, right? In the next video I'll talk about semantic markup, and then we'll go through a transition period where we will discuss some styling basics. But before styling basics, I'll probably do a few real life just pure HTML projects. so we get a hang of whatever we have learned so far, and we'll see if we can do something more practical. So see you in the next videos.